I was born and raised in a farm in South Dakota, and to very loving parents. And when I was 3 years old, my mother was concerned about the fact that I was masturbating, since she had read someplace that it was the ultimate sin. Took me to a doctor in a clinic in North Dakota, who took me to a hospital in Minnesota and removed my clitoris. My mother was at the end of the table. I remember the pain, and I also remember knowing that I couldn't trust her anymore. And often wondered why I always understood what had happened to me. And as a health educator, I helped develop a program for preparing children for surgery, and found out from a child life specialist that at age 3, the development stage is fear that some part of your body will be cut off because you were naughty. And that did happen to me. Funny thing about this is that, just like other sexual abuse, when one has been abused, one tends to masturbate more. And it became my way of dealing with a lot of issues. And so when I was caught, I would always be told that this was either going to make me crazy or continued on. And so I felt very alone. I also had a very strong personality and was told over and over that I should have been a boy. And when I reached puberty, wondered just what did they cut off, and was I indeed half male, half female? What really, how different was I? I spent a lot of time with my brother, and I remember when we were about 14 and 15 years old, crawling up on the top of a corn crib in the sunshine, chewing on corn stalks, and talking about what was expected of us in life. And he didn't want to accept his role as a farmer's son. I didn't want to become a teacher or a nurse. And funny thing, I'm in the health field teaching. And so together we were going to face the world in our own way. And he went on to college to become a civil engineer. I began my freshman year in chemistry, and then he drowned. And I really fell apart. I felt that I lost the only person who really understood who I was. Although that I had never spoken to him about the mutilation, I had only discussed this with my mother, who had said that she thought it was a mistake. Never mentioned it to my sisters. When I went back to college, I began studying art and psychology, and quit again because I had begun to try to deal with some of these issues. Shared one once with a counselor and who absolutely didn't know what to do with it, so stuffed it again. And then I was married and had 3 children in less than 3 years. My deliveries were not easy. Second stage labor stopped. Paced the floor for probably 12, 14 hours. Wanted a natural delivery. But a nurse came in and said that she was going to give me a hypo, and I said, I don't want it. And she said, it'll just help you relax. Well, it knocked me out. My child was born, and I really came to 3 or 4 hours later. So I don't remember the delivery room experience at all. About 2 months later, when I came back, after my 6 weeks checkup, and then a couple weeks later, I came back to the doctor and I said, intercourse is really difficult. I have all these bumpy things and it's not working well. And he brought me a mirror to show me how I looked. And I said, I know how I look. And he said, well, I thought you had a bicycle accident or something. And I told him what happened. The continuing response from doctors is just blank, as if, I hear these stories every day. Very few doctors show any emotion when they hear my story. And then, my second child, my obstetrician left the country, didn't ever say goodbye to me, and turned me over to another obstetrician who kept suggesting to me that Masters and Johnson would love to get a hold of me, and he would make the arrangements if I ever wanted to make some money that way. I didn't follow through on that. Those deliveries weren't easy either. The youngest son was smaller, or my third son. My second son was delivered, put in a basket, and I was left in the stirrups, and everyone left the two of us to go deliver another woman, and my little boy was crying and turning blue, and I was still in the stirrups because I had a huge episiotomy that needed to be sewn up. And I didn't have any of the closeness that one should experience in birth. My third son was smaller, he came early. It was the closest that I remember experiencing delivery, but he began urinating immediately, and the doctor held him over my face. So my initiation to my son was to have urine in my face. And later I thought about, wouldn't it be great to have another baby just to be in control of the birth experience? But I didn't feel that that was the way to bring a child into the world. Later, I began to have some physical symptoms, some bowel irritability that I think was related to the fact that I had all of these issues that I needed to deal with. And I began to tell my story after one day. We had moved to a small town, and we joined a church where women weren't allowed to vote, and we lived kitty corner from this church. And I looked out at the stained glass windows one morning and just began to sob, because I realized that the church had some responsibility for what had happened to me. And then I began to share my story with pastors, and often on deaf ears. Some people were afraid of me. Only one clergy person said, "What a terrible thing to have happened to you." But that was a gift. In 1980, one day I saw an ad for scholarships by the Lutheran World Federation for women who wanted to work on third world issues. And on the same day, saw an article about genital mutilation in Africa, where they were bringing it into a hospital setting. And I thought, I can do this. Mine was done in a hospital setting. It didn't take care of all the problems. So I worked for months getting a scholarship to go to be a part of this conference. Found out I wasn't invited, or I wouldn't be allowed to be there as a Westerner. But the women's desk invited me to come to Switzerland and talk to international organizations there. And I met with several people from different organizations, including a group of African women who were working on eradicating it. And what they had said was, go home and work on your own culture, and then come back and we can see what we've learned and work together. I went home and I went back to college. It took me 8 years to finish my bachelor's degree in art and psychology, and then 3 more years to get my master's degree in adult education. I now work as a health educator. Much of my healing has been through my artwork. I began when I was 19 making these figures that had 3 forms, twisting, seaweedy type of things, and I did it in clay when I was 19. I've done it in bronze, and finally did this 7-foot woven sculpture that I always knew was my portrait. I didn't know why. And about a year ago, I met a woman who was an incest survivor, and her artwork in her teens showed a very angry 3-headed horse. And we talked afterwards about the significance of the 3 parts and what does it mean. And we decided that it means the split of body, soul, and spirit, or body, mind, and spirit that takes place when you've been sexually abused in any way. And I want to promote for you the use of art, be it dancing, singing, visual arts, in your healing. Express who you are in whatever way, creative way that you know. Only 10 days ago, I was in Washington, D.C. for a conference by the American Psychological Association on psychosocial and behavioral factors in women's health. And our keynote address was by our Surgeon General, Jocelyn Elders. And 2 things stand out from her speech. One is, a person with courage is a majority. And the other is that we need to use existing networks. And since we were speaking about women she said, women run most churches, but we run it to perpetuate the hierarchy. We need to use those existing networks for our own causes. And so I think we can use those existing networks for this class as well.